we'll be discussing the solution to the problem score gap minimizer. So before moving ahead with the solution, let's go through with the problem statement. So a teacher is analyzing the test scores of students and wants to select a group of scores with the smallest possible range. The goal is to minimize the difference between the highest and lowest scores in the selected group. Given an array of integers nums where each element will represent the score of a student and an integer k representing the number of scores to choose. Determine the smallest possible difference between the highest and lowest scores in the group of selected scores of k selected scores. So next, what is the input format? So first line will contain an integer t that will be the number of test cases. And for each test case, there will be two lines of inputs. That is, the first one will contain two spaced separated integers n, that is the number of students, and k, that is the number of scores to select. And the second line will contain n spaced separated representing the scores of the student. And these are the constants for t and k and the array nums which will have the scores of the student. So the approach that we will be using for this problem will be, so firstly we will be sorting the array nums which will help to group the close scores together so that the sorted array will have smaller differences rather than a randomly arranged array. So we will sort the array for that purpose. And the next technique which we'll be using is the sliding window technique, which will consist in sliding window or a sub array of the size k. For every window of size k, we will be calculating the difference between the highest and the lowest scores. So let's go through the sample input over here. So 2 is the number of test cases. So this and this are the two test cases. For the first one, n is equals to 1 and k is equals to 1. And this is the nums array. And there is one way to pick the scores. So the minimum possible difference is 0. And for the second test case, n is equals to 4 and k is equals to 2. And this is the nums array. And there are 6 ways to pick the scores of the two students. So between 9 minus 4 is 5, 9 minus 1 is 8, 9 minus 7 is 2, and as we can see as it goes on. And we find that 2 is the minimum possible difference. So that's the answer which has been outputted here. Okay, so now let's take a look at the code. So this is the main function, and here we take the input t, that is the number of test cases. We run a for loop. For each test case, this process is going to happen. And here, firstly, we take the two inputs n and k. N represents the number of scores and k represents the size of the subarray or the window. And nums will be the array which will be storing the scores. So here there is an edge case, that is, if k is greater than n, it is invalid to group and find the differences. Hence it is going to be 0. Hence we print 0 over here. So we sort the array using the dot sort method, and now here we initialize a mini variable to store the initial minimum difference, which we can calculate as follows. And then we use a for loop within the range k to n, and now we find the minimum difference for each window, that is the sub array. This is the highest element, this is the lowest element, and we find the difference, and this is the initial one, and we compare them and find the minimum among these two using the min function, and we store it in the mini. And this loop goes on, and then finally what is the possible minimum difference, we print it out, and that's it for the code. Let's run the code and see. So yes, we have passed the test case, and we will submit the code. Yes, and it's processing. Okay, yes. So it is been accepted. So that's it for the video. Thank you.